On January 21, 2025, one day after taking office, President Trump signed an order. It went to the Department of Homeland Security with a simple instruction to end the policy that had protected schools, churches, and hospitals from immigration enforcement for 30 years. By the end of that day, those spaces were no longer protected. ICE could now conduct raids in schools, they could enter churches, they could set up checkpoints outside hospitals. The world reacted with shock. 30 years of protection gone in a single order. Children in classrooms across America were suddenly afraid their parents would be taken during the school day. Patients delayed seeking medical care because the hospital was no longer a safe place. But here's what nobody said out loud at first. That 30-year protection was never actually law. It was a memo. One piece of paper written in 1993, rewritten in 2011, expanded in 2021, and deleted in 2025. Back in 1993, the Clinton administration was cracking down on illegal immigration. They were increasing enforcement, tightening borders, making it harder for undocumented people to live openly in the country. But at the same time, someone in that administration made a different kind of decision. They said that people should still be able to go to the hospital without fear. Children should still be able to attend school. People should be able to worship in churches and seek help from community organizations without worrying that immigration agents would be waiting outside. So they created a policy. It wasn't written into law, it was written into a memo. The memo said that ICE agents should use discretion, should focus their resources elsewhere, should avoid conducting enforcement actions at sensitive locations like schools and hospitals. For 18 years, that memo held. Different administrations came and went, but that memo remained the policy. Then in 2011, the Obama administration took that informal understanding and made it official. They wrote it down, they formalized it, they gave it structure and guidelines. Still, it was never law, it was official policy, but policy can change with the stroke of a pen. In 2021, the Biden administration expanded it further. They added more locations. They made the guidance clearer. They told immigration agents to stay away from schools, hospitals, churches, courthouses, and other sensitive spaces. For 30 years, millions of undocumented immigrants lived with the belief that these spaces were protected. They thought this protection was written into the legal foundation of the country, like a constitutional right. They believed if they went to school or the hospital, they would be safe. They were wrong, not because the protection didn't exist for 30 years. It did exist. It was real in practice, but it was never protected by law. You probably think what happened was straightforward. Trump took office and violated an existing protection. He broke something that had been established law. But that interpretation depends on one thing being true. It depends on that protection actually being law. 30 years is a long time, long enough that most people believed the sanctuary policy was written into the legal code somewhere, long enough that lawyers could cite it, long enough that schools and hospitals built their procedures around it, long enough that immigrant families organized their entire lives assuming this protection was permanent. But if it was law, there's a simple question nobody asked. Why didn't anyone ever write it down as law? The Clinton administration could have proposed it to Congress. They didn't. The Obama administration had 8 years and Democratic control of Congress for 2 of those years. They could have made it a statute. They didn't. The Biden administration had the same opportunity. They expanded the policy through executive action, but they never asked Congress to make it permanent. 30 years, 3 different administrations, multiple opportunities to turn a memo into actual law, and it never happened. That's not because no one thought of it. It's because a memo is more useful than a law. A memo can be changed by the next president without a vote in Congress. A memo doesn't require debate or amendment or compromise. A memo can exist in the space between what's legal and what's accepted practice. But that space is empty when the person holding the memo decides to throw it away. The protection that people believed was law turned out to be something much simpler. It was just someone's decision to be merciful, and when that person left office, their successor could make a different decision. That's not how law works, that's how power works. Trump took office on January 20th, 2025. On January 21st, the very next day, his administration ended the sanctuary policy. Think about what that timing means. He didn't wait to see how his other policies would land. He didn't consult with advisors about potential backlash. He didn't give Congress time to propose alternative legislation. He didn't allow for any public process or comment period. He signed the order before most people had even unpacked their moving boxes in the White House. The official explanation was that this was a campaign promise. He had said he would do it, so he did it. Simple, straightforward, a president keeping his word. But consider what that timing actually reveals. An order this significant, affecting millions of people, didn't require preparation time. It didn't require coordination with multiple agencies. It didn't require legal review to determine if it was constitutional. It was ready to go on day one. That suggests something had already been prepared. Months before the election, someone had drafted this order. They had studied the existing policy. They had written the language. They had made sure it could be signed immediately upon taking office. The order wasn't created because Trump took office. Trump took office and immediately executed an order that was already waiting to be executed. Why move so fast? Why not wait a few weeks, a few months to let the political landscape settle? Because speed creates facts on the ground before opposition can organize. When you announce something will happen in the future, organizations can prepare, lawyers can file lawsuits, Congress can draft countermeasures, communities can mobilize. But if you do it on day one, before anyone expects it, before the machinery of resistance can even turn on, then the change becomes real before anyone can stop it. By the time school districts realized what had happened, ICE agents were already showing up at schools. By the time hospitals could organize a legal response, the policy was already in effect. By the time immigrant families could process the news, the protection was already gone. The speed wasn't about keeping a promise. The speed was about making the change irreversible. Here's the question that ties everything together. If this protection was so important, why didn't Congress make it law? 30 years is enough time for any piece of legislation to pass. The Democrats controlled Congress multiple times during those decades. They could have written a bill, they could have debated it, they could have voted on it, they could have made it permanent, protected by law, impossible for any single president to undo. They didn't. The same is true for every administration that believed in the sanctuary policy. They all had the power to propose it to Congress. None of them did. Why could that possibly be so? One answer is practical. Laws are hard to pass. They require compromise. They require supermajorities in some cases. They require the other party to either agree or be overridden. It's slow and messy and uncertain. Executive policy is easier. A memo can be written quickly. It can be implemented immediately. It can be adjusted without debate. It requires no one's permission but the president's. So for 30 years, administrations chose the easier path. They chose a memo over a law. They chose discretion over obligation. But there's a deeper answer, and it's darker. A memo that can be rescinded at any moment is useful. It keeps undocumented immigrants in a state of conditional safety. They're protected today, but that protection could disappear tomorrow. They never know if they're truly safe. That uncertainty is itself a form of control. People don't organize when they're uncertain. They don't demand permanent solutions. They don't push their representatives to pass laws. They just accept whatever protection is offered and hope it lasts. In the Jim Crow era, segregation was maintained through laws, but also through something else. Through the constant threat of what would happen if you violated the unwritten rules. Through the understanding that your safety depended on someone else's goodwill, not on your rights. 30 years of sanctuary policy maintained through Memo is similar. It created the illusion of protection while keeping the actual protection vulnerable, temporary, conditional. So when Trump took office and deleted the memo, he didn't destroy a protection that was actually there. He revealed that the protection had never been real. It had always been conditional on someone choosing to offer it. The system that allowed this wasn't broken when Trump used it. The system was always designed this way. Let's go back to the official story. Trump took office and destroyed 30 years of protection. He ended a policy that had kept schools and hospitals safe from immigration enforcement. In a single order, he made it possible for ICE to conduct raids anywhere, including in places where children learn and patients seek care. All of that is true, but it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that those spaces were never actually protected by law. For 30 years, they were protected by memo, by someone's decision to be merciful, by administrative discretion that could be reversed at any moment. If Congress had wanted those spaces to be truly protected, they could have written a law. Anytime in 30 years they could have done it. But they didn't, because a law would have limited the power of future presidents. A law would have required compromise. A law would have forced a public debate about immigration and safety and who belongs where. A memo was easier. A memo allowed successive administrations to claim they were protecting these spaces while keeping the actual protection fragile and temporary. This isn't new. During the Jim Crow era, segregation was maintained through explicit law, but also through something else. Through the understanding that your safety, your rights, your access to public spaces depended not on law but on someone's goodwill, on unwritten rules, on things that could be changed without legal process or public debate. The sanctuary policy operated in a similar space, not quite law but accepted practice, not quite protected but believed to be safe. So here's the final question. Did Trump destroy a protection that actually existed, or did Trump simply reveal that the protection had never actually been there?